down and continue to insist that the U.S. does not need products from Canada and that the U.S. could get along without that, as he is trying to, with the intention of the tariffs, to bring more manufacturing back inside the United States. A goal that certainly takes time, and the discussion of tariffs, the planned implementation of tariffs, the back and forth about ratcheting up and answering tariffs has certainly frayed relationships. The president addressed some of this in the Oval Office just a short time ago.
We've been ripped off for years, and we're not going to be ripped off anymore. No, I'm not going to bend at all. Aluminum or steel or cars, we're not going to bend. We've been ripped off as a country for many, many years. We've been subjected to costs that we shouldn't be subjected to.
And certainly Canada is holding firm, saying, some of their top officials saying that they're not looking to escalate, but they won't back down either. So one of the questions is, what is the off-ramp? How will this eventually be resolved? And certainly that remains unclear as markets react, and certainly different businesses. And the types of items that the president talked about, adding that 200%, certainly are visual items, things that are accessible to people in terms of relating to the price of a bottle of champagne. They could imagine what that difference would be. Restaurants and all the rest could be affected. Zinkley?
Yeah, and Kelly mentioned the markets reacting. Brian, all of this tariff whiplash, once again, having big impact on the stocks. Just walk us through what's going on.
Yeah, and, we have to remember that Monday was the worst day for the stock market in 2025, and all this turmoil is linked to the tariff discussion. And what investors in Wall Street have said is that until we get more clarity on what's happening with this tariff policy and how the White House is navigating it, we should expect to continue to see volatility and turmoil on Wall Street. We've seen that throughout the week. In fact, the only day that we really got a reprieve so far was yesterday, where the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, that tech-heavy composite, ended the day positive, was because of an inflation report that came out showing that actually inflation in America wasn't as bad as Wall Street economists had expected it to be for the month of February, which, by the way, didn't include the impact of these tariffs. So again, the tariff story is really the big thing weighing on this Wall Street. And in talking with investors when I was at the New York Stock Exchange on Tuesday, they all said we expect to be buckling in for this volatility for the near future in the absence of any more certainty from the White House.
And Brian, it's weighing on investors, Wall Street, it's weighing on experts, but it's also weighing on consumers. We heard from some of them. First, let's listen.
We don't eat out that much. We may eat out maybe once a month.
And I commute to work. I take the train, so no gas.
I use the coupons. I use the Stater Savers. I don't just shop here. I shop at Aldi's. I shop at Grocery Outlet. Raise my own chicken so I don't have to buy eggs.
So that's how some consumers are adjusting. But Brian, how bad really could this get for consumers if this trade war marches on?
Yeah, and we are in the early stages of this, right? I mean, the tariffs that are in effect right now, the big ones are the steel and aluminum tariffs that took effect yesterday. That could impact the prices of appliances, cars. We still have that tariff on China, 20%. That could impact the electronics we bring in. But I think the big one to talk about is alcohol. I think that, as Kelly mentioned, this is very symbolic. Every country is so proud of their alcoholic exports. When you talk about the United States, the reason why Trump decided to throw out this 200% tariff on EU exports of alcohol is because the EU put that 50% tariff on American whiskey, American bourbon. So he's saying, all right, well, if that's the case, 200% on wine coming in from France, people are going to feel that. People do love to drink. So I think that's a very big part of this conversation as well.
That's true. And Kelly, while we have you at the White House, let's talk some other big headlines for the administration. The White House pulling the nomination of the man who was selected to lead the CDC just hours before his confirmation hearing. Remind us, who is he and why did he get pulled?
Well, this is certainly notable because only Matt Gaetz for Attorney General fell in terms of the trying to get key positions filled. So it's notable that the administration pulled Dave Weldon, who has views that are not supportive of vaccines in all instances. The former congressman has been outspoken about that. And the Centers for Disease Control obviously has a big public health mandate to do things like encourage vaccinations and deal with public health. So with Secretary Kennedy also having some views that are not always supportive of vaccines, or at least raising the possibility that people should choose, they did not see the votes coming for Weldon, so his nomination is now out.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell and Brian Chung, thank you both so much. Another setback this hour for the mission to bring those 2 astronauts home. NASA and SpaceX were forced to scrub a launch yesterday to the International Space Station. The rocket is supposed to bring 4 crew members to the station, and after a brief handover would finally allow Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams to return after more than 9 months.